Good afternoon, everybody. Hope everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. Hang on for a few minutes while we wait for the room to fill up and get started.
Hey,
Mm.
when you get a chance, tell Derek I need to talk to him sometime next week. I've got a case I'm going to need his help with. Oh, sorry.
Greetings, folks. We're about ready to get started here in a minute. Thank you for joining me. Please be free to invite others. This is important information. How you doing, Saab? Let's see here. Everybody's mute should be unmuted, or mic should be unmuted, so please feel free to comment.
Gracias, mi amor.
Hey, you're welcome.
Good afternoon.
Hey, what's your topic tonight?
We're talking about the Numident record, which is the numerical identification system of Social Security. And we're going to wind up with the, I hope, the International Settlement Bank. I believe that's the Settlement Bank of Netherlands, right? Isn't that The Hague?
Yeah, it would be. I'm not that familiar with it. I know The Hague. Hey, Keith,
Yes.
do you know anybody else who has thrown off the government?
Um, there are a lot of people that have thrown off government in certain aspects. Like myself, for instance, I've got a standing record from the last time I went into court, despite the fact that I was not what most people would call successful. I did get
Huh?
both convicted and spent 47 of 60-day jail sentence in jail. But when I walked out refusing to sign. And so they have an established record now that I refuse to sign any documents. And of course, they watch my Facebook page. They've seen my progression grow from the aggressive combatant that I was when I was in trial to the peaceful resolve that I have of doing things today through knowledge instead of fear and violence. So in that aspect, I've thrown off the government, but I've still got steps that I've got to take care of to secure my own standing and abilities to make my own directives.
Did you ever declare that at any point?
Matter of fact, I just posted my PMA today.
Okay.
If you look on my timeline before this Zoom meeting, you'll see there's a post on there with my PMA in it.
Okay.
It doesn't have my bylaws yet. I'm working on my bylaws. I hope to have that done by the new week. Gonna work
So
on that over
you're
the
kind
weekend.
of going down a corporate thing with bylaws and stuff like that?
Right. Well, basically it's the way the United States has their operation set up. They've got a Declaration of Independence, a Constitution, Articles of Confederation, and peace treaty. And basically that's what your bylaws are going to be. It's going to be the same setup.
Why? Well, yeah, my question, I look at that and I understand it, and I can hypothecate and understand what you're doing and why, as well as what other people are doing. I keep kind of going, why? Because I go, I'm a human being. I'm not a number. I'm not, why do I create corporations, LLCs, and all this other crapola instead of just being myself? And that's just kind of the way I'm standing. And I understand what everybody else is doing from a technical and logistical perspective. Just beyond me why people just don't choose to be themselves.
Right. Well, a lot of people. Well, take for you and I, for instance. I don't know that you've got too many people that are dependent directly on you. I don't know that you've got a wife or children or anything, and I'm in that boat myself. I have no other family members that are dependent upon me and my decisions, and so I'm much at a greater free will to do the things that I need to do in life as they come along. And one
Right.
of those things that I want to do is re-enter this commercial system, but I want to do it in the aspect where no matter what instrument I forward, it's going to be accepted as a international bill of exchange on the international level.
Yeah, okay, I understand that. But again, I ask, and I'm just asking myself not to argue, just why would I do that? Back in the 1800s or before, like I said, you just hang out your shingle, and you don't have to enter into commerce and ask permission with anyone. You can deal with people, which you effectively do just one to one, outside
Right,
of
and that's
a
what this is all
Walmart or
about.
something like that. Go ahead.
And that's what this is all about, is establishing yourself as a separate association, that you're not entering into their commercial system, but you're on an international level able to use the international banking laws, and in accordance with those, you are the banker, and therefore you're helping them comprehend the directives that you're giving right from the start, that every time you issue a draft of an order to pay, that they're going to accept it, but there are certain guidelines that have to be set up to relinquish them of their liability that they're assigning you. And one of those things is establishing an escrow account where we don't need that numerical identification.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I can understand that part of it. Just get kind of not frustrated, but I'm just trying to do it as me.
Right.
I'm me.
And
I don't need everybody's number and all this other crapola.
and I'm gonna grin here real quick, Sovereign, because I got an instrument here not too long ago. Appreciate it. And the instrument has a certain design on it, and it says specifically no account. Now,
It says specifically what?
no account.
No account. Okay.
And on the upper right-hand corner, instead of having an account number like a regular check, it has a securities number. And I think what happens is, the process is we're supposed to be able to issue our own international bills of exchange. And an international bill of exchange is drafted a lot like a check, but it's handwritten. Along with that, it's supposed to come with a set of assignments. Those assignments are duties for the trustee, because as the maker of the order to pay, you're the grantor of property that's being transferred.
Right.
And we transfer that property, we use a trustee. In our situation, what we're doing here with these bank accounts is we're opening a bank account, and the bank is no longer trustee. The bank has certain powers to do the transaction as a matter of probate.
Right.
And what we need to do is step out of that capacity by quit getting bank accounts and setting up escrow accounts where we can establish
I'm with you.
a body of trust for surety for future liabilities. In other words, we have our substantial property, what's known as real and personal effects. That's everything that we have in life. We can deposit that into an escrow account. We don't have to do the UCC1. We can deposit it in an escrow account. And then in establishing the assignment of a broker at a bank, instead of opening a bank account, we establish a relationship with a broker who then has been assigned authority to act as authorized representative of your transactions based on his unqualified guarantee that you are the one that's conducting the transactions. You're the
Right.
original.
Understand. Hey, interesting concept. I like that.
And this is all part of the Medallion Stamp Signature Guarantee Program.
Okay.
It's also mentioned in the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve's exemption letter, where they clarify that there are peoples that are exempt from the customer identification program because we're not customers.
Right. Yeah, I was reading. I think you posted some stuff on that today. I was reading it a little bit.
Right. Yeah. See, we're supposed to be partners in business. Equal consideration, equal benefit.
Yeah.
And the first thing I want to do here today is at title, at UCC 6-102. And I'm going to pop the link into the chat bar here for everybody. And I want you guys to take a look at this, because it's got very distinct language in here. And we're going to go down and we're going to look at Part D. This is a set of definitions, and it says claim. Claim means a right to payment from the seller. Very distinct. Claim means a right to payment from the seller. And in the government services programs, that's what they're doing. They're selling a service. You have a right to payment. You have an inherent right to payment because they have charged your person and then exacted Federal Reserve notes from you. And what we have to do is comprehend this concept of the bank account, that we got to quit with these bank accounts. We've got to learn how to establish ourselves as a private member association, which is doing business as a bank, doing business as a healthcare provider, doing business as a counsel in any manner of life. And if you look at my PMA that I posted tonight, my Facebook link, you'll see that it's very distinct and unambiguous language that clarifies a lot of things without having to sit there and name everything. And that's what we need to get down to, is realize that we're the ones that have the right to payment because they've sold us a service that we're not subject to. That service is the circulation of fiat currency. Every time we use it, there's a tax on it. It's not the way it's supposed to work. It's a monopoly. We're supposed to use those Federal Reserve notes to convert to gold. How do you do that? They won't let you do that. Sure they will. Sure they will. Go to any coin store. Anybody that sells gold jewelry, silver jewelry, diamonds, all that stuff, you can buy it with your Federal Reserve notes. And it is now substantive collateral value for your estate. What you have done is taken Federal Reserve notes and converted them to substantive value. Now, when we make these transfers, think about this. Say I get a check for $50. I cash that check, and what do? They convert it from a paper form to another paper form where other private individuals will accept. Because if you give me a check and I don't cash it, and I try to negotiate that instrument, which it is a negotiable instrument, if I try to negotiate that with a private man, they're not going to accept it. Why? Because it's still a secured instrument. It's a security. You have to have a broker exchange it. That's why you have to go to a bank and cash it. Whereas if I take a gold substance worth $50, I can trade that privately. And most any man will accept it. And this is what we have to learn about this fiat currency. We are not the seller. We are not the ones that sold the fictional system. As I explained here lately, the Newman report tells us right on it that the statutory individual to whom the false record pertains. And it's a false record that pertains to the statutory individual. And I'm going to show you an order of things. We're going to look at UCC, contradictory terms of instrument. And this is at UCC 3-114. And there is the link there. Now, when we look at this UCC 3-114, we see that it says, if an instrument contains contradictory terms, written terms prevail over printed terms, handwritten terms prevail over both, and words prevail over numbers. And this is why we see on checks, you write it out numerically and in a literal grammar text. Plain and simple. The concept here is that their numerical identification system is prevailed over by written words. Well, if the written word is prevailed over by the spoken word, in beginning was word, let my yea be my yea and my nay be my nay. This is one of the things that tells us that we can go into court and we can speak our word. As long as we know our word is truth, we don't need documentation. And this is what Sovereign's talking about. Stand your square, but know your square. Know what you're doing. Know what you're talking about. So that when they try to accost you by casting these spells, understand, in beginning was word, and the word was with God, and the word was God. In beginning was the word, and the word was with truth, and the word was truth. They seem to think that in beginning was the Word, and the Word was with magic, and the Word was magic. So dispel their magic by filling in the gaps that they leave, that provide the deceit. Show them the truth with the correct spelling. Learn the words that you're using. Pure and simple. The next thing, in regards to the Numinant report, again, if you file for a Numinant report and you haven't done the SS5 correction, I'm just going to mute people for a minute. And okay. When it comes to the Numinant report, we've already discussed that it's a false record. And when you apply for, make a request for it before you do the status correction, they're going to give you the Numinant report on the decedent. And this is by that form. Now, if you want a Numinant report after you do the name change, the only Numinant report they can give you is the live Numinant report. However, they don't tell you that in order to request the live Numinant report, you have to do it in handwriting. You have to physically write them a letter to a specific address, $16. And then, of course, if you do it correctly with the registered mail with 21 $1 stamps, so you're going to have $16 that you're going to send them, plus the $21 it's going to cost you for the stamps. So it's going to cost you $37, but you're going to have a registered mail number and everything for that instrument. And you have to give them the name, social security number, and date of birth, and provide an oath. Just like the previous statement on the record or the request for the decedent Numinant record, you have to make an oath on there that you are the intended recipient. You are qualified to receive that information as the originator. You are the source event in life that all that abstract information that has created a false record is derived from, pure and simple. The next part, when we try to correct this stuff so we can perform our functions of financing appropriately, one of the main things that we have to realize is the property transfers occur through trusts. You can create a contract with anybody you want, but unless you have something set up in an escrow account where both parties can give equal consideration and set that in escrow, that's what quantifies a valid contract. You both give equal consideration. Now, if I've got in escrow substantive value to indemnify the broker in case I should happen to harm him through the handwriting of my own draft of an order to pay by somehow committing fraud and involving him, then that escrow account will pay for that liability. However, I'm a co-trustee in the transaction. I too am performing a duty which I deserve compensation for through my person. Because see, I'm not doing it as my PMA, I'm doing it under the estate. And so I assign an estate trustee, which is one of my persons, to conduct the affairs in cooperation with the bank trustee, thereby performing co-trustee and co-beneficiary positions. We're both supposed to benefit from this, so we're both supposed to be beneficiaries. This is what enables that banker to accept your unqualified guaranteed signature and perform his duties as authorized representative, giving an unambiguous authorized signature on the instrument, and therefore is not liable for the person named in the instrument. It cures the liability if the transaction is performed lawfully, because both sides of the ledger are balanced. Both trustees are getting paid. Both beneficiaries are getting their compensation. And any other party involved, particularly say I want to buy something from Walmart and I've got it set up appropriately. Instead of going to Walmart and using my Federal Reserve notes, which I'm supposed to be using to buy up the silver and gold and everything of substantive value, and keeping it in escrow or in my estate collateral, I'm supposed to be using negotiable instruments. I'm supposed to draft the order to pay. I'm supposed to know how much this company A or the company B wants. I'm supposed to know what Walmart wants, the dollar amount, and the date that I need to pay them. And so this is a little different than your regular billing statement. But I can draft an order to pay, hand it to a broker, and that broker will draw the instrument, and then sign that instrument by stamping his medallion stamp signature on it. His unqualifiedly guaranteed signature. As trustee, who is not liable for his signature on the instrument for the person in the instrument because he was authorized by myself to do so. But that authorization comes in a collateral or a bilateral contract. So now he can issue a proper instrument to Walmart, which I can then go get. Go to Walmart, and here you go. And Walmart should. This is the way, in my opinion, through my research, this is the way it's supposed to work. But the thing what we're missing is that escrow account. It's not an account with a bank. And the bank doesn't draw checks off of an account. They draw instruments in the form of a check. And it is an international bill of exchange. And they sign as authorized representative, relinquished of liability, unless they go beyond the bounds of law and commit fraud themselves by not performing their functions or duties properly. Then they can be held in their private and personal capacity. And that is 31 CFR 535.210. We speak of this escrow account. The link is right there. And what I want people to pay attention to, it says, direction for establishing an escrow agreement. See, we're not establishing an escrow account. We're establishing an escrow agreement whereby we've got another third party acting as trustee, holding substantive property in escrow for liability reasons, so that I can conduct commercial transactions in the commercial world and grant them indemnification without using their insurance system. Plain and simple. And it says direction for establishing an escrow agreement. The Federal Reserve Bank of New York, as fiscal agent of the United States, is licensed. Who's licensing them? Who's authorizing them? Who's directing them? And who's compelling them? Because it says is licensed, authorized, directed, and compelled to enter into escrow and related agreements under which certain money and other assets shall be credited to escrow accounts by the Bank of England or the NB Settlement Bank of the Netherlands. Very important to comprehend this, because when we're talking about the Federal Reserve banks, Sava was questioning about why do we have to present ID? And this is what we're getting at. We don't. There is an exemption through the United States Code known as the Medallion Stamp Guaranteed Signature Program, wherein by these banks can accept unqualifiedly guaranteed signatures as authorization as long as things are being done appropriately as licensed, authorized, directed, and compelled to do so. And in that, there is no requirement for a numerical identification. You use private credentials. And this is the same on the international level as we see in the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve. Let me punch this one in. This is called their interagency exemption letter. And I want you guys to pay attention to this. This is talking about FinCEN and CIP, which is CIP, Customer Identification Program. And they're talking about the exemption of the Customer Identification Program. See, again, we're looking at the unqualified guaranteed signature based on private credentials rather than a numerical identification. Because everything in this commercial system is depending upon a numerical identification. Well, the problem is it needs to start with the private credentials first. See, on your driver's license, it starts with the state of Iowa. That's the authorizing party. So instead of having a numerical identification where it has the state of Iowa and then you and a number, and you have private credentials stating who you're, who you are, Keith Orland, Keith hyphen Orland, full colon stop Little, and I happen to be the owner, proprietor, executor of the Keith Orland Estate Bank and Trust, and we operate under the Keith Orland Little PMA, and we do so in accordance with international law. And I believe you're compelled to accept an unqualified guaranteed signature as long as I have established an escrow agreement. And that all sounds logical to me. And I'm hoping that the studies that I've been doing and the information I've been putting out will help people tie this in and realize that that copyright, trade name, trademark, patent concept is based on your own inherent authority. Plain and simple. Nothing more, nothing less. I'm going to go ahead and unmute everybody. And it looks like everybody's unmuted. Some people went ahead and muted on their own. You're still muted, but the floor is open as we continue to discuss some more. Any questions you have, please feel free. But be sure to yield the floor appropriately. Please enter appropriately by asking for the floor.
Keith, did you see them people that have posted their copyright trademark online with their handprints, fingerprints, footprints, and they put their name and all the different variations, and then they do a trademark copyright copy claim posted online? And I heard this week on Jackie Figg's call that someone was speaking about it and saying that people are giving the special treatment when they do that. They don't get hassled by the law and stuff. I don't know what trademark you're talking about, but if you would just fill us in.
Basically what we're doing is we have to, again, I'm going to go right back to the words. Everything begins with the words, and clarification of what the words mean, the truth of the words, the knowledge of the words and everything. And what we're talking about there is patent itself stands for to lay open. And real quick here, I guess I should correct, while we're correcting the words, we need to correct the way we pronounce them as well as the way we spell them on paper. And so I want to make sure you people comprehend that the word patent is not actually patent. The word patent is actually patent. Patent. And its opposite is latent. Latent and patent. Latent means underlying. Patent means on top of, to lay open, make public. And that's what we're doing with the copyright, trade name, trademark. We're going to publicize that. We're going to make it a patent. And just the action alone is the patent. Okay? This is done by your modern day ranchers. They brand their cattle. They don't name them. They patent them by putting a brand on them that can be seen in the public. It is laid open. Okay? And this is the same concept with that copyright, trademark, trade name. You're going to lay it open. You're going to let people know that you have the inherent rights to direct all of the affairs of the person and persons as derivatives of yourself. You have a right to be secure in your persons, papers, properties, and effects. And we know that the person is not ourselves because we know ourselves are not the papers. We know ourself is not the effects. We know ourself is not the property. But we also know the person is not us. And that's where we have to be aware of the distinction that when we do that, we have to make sure we know both how to communicate in that literal form as well as our actions speak louder than our words. So when we do that, we have to make sure that we carry that name in good conscience, that we bear that good name in truth, honesty, the ability to know that everybody else is of equal value and you need to give them that equal consideration so that you can equally benefit by sharing together. And that's what it all comes down to. So yeah, it is very important to do certain things like that. And that's why, again, I posted my PMA. I posted that here on Facebook in a public forum. So it has been laid open publicly. It has been published to the public eye, but I'm still going to get it published in a local paper so that I have it down on paper form with a receipt. Because here in Facebook forum, a lot of people think, well, it's a public forum, you can just publish here. You still have to have some kind of receipt. Now, we can have the electronic trail, but that is not technically called the receipt. So we need to do it in a manner where we give somebody else equal consideration for doing a duty assigned, I guess you say it, because you're entering into an agreement with the local paper to assign them to push or publish certain words. And they're going to be in agreement of that no matter what those words are, unless those words are traitorous or treasonous or threats or something like that. And that's their duty, their responsibility to look at that document and make sure that when they print it, they're not going to be held liable for it. Same thing with our banking transactions.
Can I record?
Oh yeah, please. I'm sorry. No one's more allowed to record. Okay, sorry about that, brother. I will. I do have it down, guys. I do have it down so that I know how to pull these up and place them back on the internet. However, these Thursday night meetings, I think I'm going to save for my Patreons. However, those that are joining me live now, feel free to send me a message in Messenger, and I will be glad to send you a link to the recording so you have a recording of it as well.
Thank you.
Let's see here. Back to this Board of Governors Federal Reserve thing. It says the Federal Reserve, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, the National Credit Union Administration, the Office of the Comptroller of Currency, collectively the federal banking agencies, and the U.S. Department of Treasury's Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, and this is the FinCEN, are issuing the attached interagency order to grant an exemption from the requirements of the Customer Identification Program rule for loans extended by banks and their subsidiaries to commercial customers to facilitate the purchases of property and casualty insurance policies. Okay? And this is what we're talking about. We're doing those transfers of property. Somebody's purchasing property and we're transferring it somehow. You know, we're either purchasing the property ourselves or we're the seller. We have to be clear of our capacities in each and every transaction, so that we can be sure to get paid. So if you're acting as trustee, selling something, make sure you get paid. Put it in the assignments. Execute your transactions accordingly. Know how they operate. What else, guys? I know we got to have questions. This is
Yeah, I got questions.
okay. Go ahead, Sparta.
What if you're in a position where you're being blocked, as in you're being blocked by police, lawyers, and so forth?
What's the reason they're blocking you?
Well, what happened is my uncle had left a power of attorney with me, as I told. I don't know if I did tell you about it, and some properties for me to oversee. But somehow it's like a family feud. I don't know where it's actually coming from. Who to say this person or that person. I'm just trying to figure out who is benefit from like just keeping me in the dark or in whatever it is they're trying to do. Because I've tried to get assistance from local government officials, because I've been to the Bar Association, I've been to the commission. I tried to go even to the media. Like, you know, you guide me as well, because I get a lot of guidance from you. So I listen, I study, I do my research, I read the Constitution, I read their oath and all of that. So I walk the steps.
You're dealing with issues in Jamaica? In regards
yeah, that's
to
in Jamaica, but it's stemming. Yeah, but it's stemming from issues also in America, because my uncle is currently in America.
Okay, so he's a naturalized citizen?
Yeah, he is.
Okay, so he's got a numerical identification.
Yeah.
The government is probating the property. In other words, probate is to prove will. And when we're dealing with these courts and they're probating the property, they're probating it because somebody doesn't have a living will. Or they're not addressing that living will properly in the private realm. It's being addressed in the public. And that's why they're doing it under probate.
Well, yeah, you're correct, because when I went down to the Supreme Court and they told me that the lawyer had picked up the grant, because the grant was issued in my name. When I asked them how long ago, they said from 2018 January. And the lawyer didn't contact me or try to get in touch with me or anything at all. So
Right.
You're correct.
Have you been able to get in touch with your uncle?
No, but my uncle, they get a, so to speak, stroke from 2017 until now in his speech, not saying anything.
But
And I've
does he
been blocked.
comprehend what's going on?
Yeah, he does.
Okay. So if you went to him with a handwritten, say, comprehensible and fair living will for him to agree to, or be able to sit down and address that issue with him so you could draw up one, I think that's about the only avenue you got. I mean, and that's going to be kind of hard because they're in his care, isn't it? Isn't he? He's under some kind of
Yeah,
hospice
exactly.
care.
Yeah, it's like he's under 24-hour surveillance. Like when him call me, yep, most time he's like, if somebody's in the room, he'll give me high contacts. Like he'll tell me,
I do have a
yeah,
friend that was in a somewhat similar situation, and he was able to go in and post a note on the door that anybody interacting with the patient accepted full liability. And somehow,
well, I
all of a sudden,
called the FBI at one point and made a report that, you know, it was elder abuse, but they went by and said, oh, everything seemed fine. But I know personally, everything is not fine, because why would you block me and you know the affairs and the things that I have been doing? You know
right.
what I mean? Yeah, so right there and then I know that some games is being played.
Yeah. And see, and that's one of the things
So they
that we
really
have to
giving me a
recognize.
real
That's one
yeah.
of that's one of the things that we have to recognize, and that's why I say the thing about liability is very important, and it's one of those things that they pay attention to because in many situations it's going to be it's much more expensive to fight a suit in court than it is to just pay the insurance. And so what we have to do is give them the notice of that liability that we're going to come after them, and they're going to have to pay us unless they provide the services appropriately. And the problem with that there is that he's under their administrative process under hospice. So he's in probate already. So in order to get him out of that, I think it's very important to come up with a living will, a handwritten living will.
Okay. All right.
I mean, does that make sense to everybody? Does anybody have any kind of contradiction to that? In my opinion, that's what we're supposed to do to keep out of these courts. These courts are probate courts.
Yeah, and to dismiss the process, because the whole process, I really want to know who is benefiting from all of this. That's what I want to know, and why they choose to, you know what I mean, waste my time through this process as well.
Because to them, each transaction they can make money on, and when they perform those transactions and they're not rebutted, they get used to having that money flow come in, and then all of a sudden when something starts jiving, they want to keep it going, so they're going to try to push you off.
Well, that mean if that's the case, they owe me millions, because currently there's a property that I should be collecting like minimum 260 grand a month.
Yeah. When we talk about violation of rights
and the lawyer collecting that
yeah,
mishandling, misusing the account.
Yeah, because what they're doing is they're using that signature. That's why I say we've got to quit giving these banks and everybody that signature through that identification program. It's all done numerical, and we know that it's a false record. So when we
so would I have to be so would I have to be in the States to actually put in these affidavits and these liens, right? I can't do it from here.
I don't know that we want to do the affidavits and liens. I think what we want to do is learn how to organize the financial instruments that are being used, because what they're doing is they're using his estate and that's because nobody's been allowed to step up as in the proper administrative capacity as either executor or next of kin assigned as successor trustee.
Okay.
See what I'm saying? That's why the written living will is important, because he can assign a successor trustee.
Okay. But what he did, he just put everything in one estate and then grant it to me.
Yeah.
But you're that's why I need to have a living will. So if whatever happens,
You can step in as the executor of the trust.
exactly. So you're correct. You're correct.
Because
But
as
remember, I
executor
tell
of the
you,
trust,
like I
they need
said,
the assignments.
but like I tell you already, bro, you're for all the knowledge and thing you dissemburse and share. My home is yours. Like I tell you before, you know what I mean? Whenever you choose to do whatever it is.
Yeah, we're supposed to help each other, you know, and that's why I say, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. And if you have anyone as well that need help, because I have multiple properties, I have multiple land space and all of that to do farming and all of that. So, but
Yeah, that's
I'm
and that's
only
one of those things I like about you, brother. You like that farming. That's a roots.
yeah.
That's a
Yeah,
roots.
yeah, because I realize a lot of these youths, they don't have any guidance. And speaking with them from these days, I realize I need to curve them back into farming, so that way
Yes.
I could get to teach them about like the law in between. Because just teaching them the law, not having any substance behind it, is like you're just wasting time.
Yeah, yeah. You know, when we deal with this commercial system and not knowing how to actually operate it appropriately, we are in effect wasting our
Yeah.
time, wasting our sources, not our resources, because we're not resourcing them. They are the
No.
sources, and we are wasting them.
Yeah, for real.
So,
But like I said, you know, love and honor for sharing the knowledge, and you know what I mean. And wherever I could, you know what I mean, assist, I'm happily and readily, willingly. You know what I mean.
well, we're supposed to be there for each other, and that's the only way I can help myself, is by helping others.
Well, honestly, I've been doing this all my life from I know myself, you know, because I'm gonna be 40 this year, right? And I never had to sign up for a job, and I created employments, a lot of employments wherever I was.
Yeah, see, we're supposed to be the directors.
Exactly. So I knew I had certain things from the get-go. So it only leave me to realize that my only thing is to do is to just give.
Yep.
But you can't only give to who you think is for you to give. You have people that really and truly they need it more than the ones that you want to give. So you have to be mindful.
Yeah, and that's one of the hard things about doing this, is trying to make sure that when somebody does reach out to me, and I hate to put it this way, but I have to vet people a lot. You know, I've got to be able to go back and do my own little research on the people. You know, like Rich here, he's looking all cockeyed. Yeah. I've been checking you out, buddy. But I like it.
Yeah.
And it's those kind of people that I got to vet, because I can only help those that are willing to help themselves. You know.
Exactly. That's the thing. Because if somebody don't appreciate you helping, what's the purpose of you even trying to help them? And they're not showing you that they appreciate.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And that's why I say I'm going to do this no matter what, because if there are people out there that need my help and I haven't helped yet, I'm going to try to attract them.
Bro, like I always, you know me, and I always cheering you on, you know, and saying, don't
I appreciate it, brother.
anyone, you know what I mean? Nah, because I see what you're doing and what you're sharing. I could receive the message. So if they can't receive it, you sharing it and they can't receive it, they just see negative in it, that's on them. You're not responsible for their feelings anyways. So
Exactly. And
yeah.
I think that's one of my talents is that I'm able to explain things in an expressive way for most people to comprehend it and be able to relate it to themselves. And I hope I hope that's what I'm doing.
That's what
Hey.
you're doing. Well, that's what I get. So for me, it's all good.
You know,
If you don't know,
I was going to say
Yeah.
my brother. I've talked to you just a little bit about my brother Steve, and he's you know I'm the one that kind of reads and listens and watches and the words and stuff like that. He's the computer guy, okay.
Yep.
But I just wanted to ask one
Yeah.
question. I know it's kind of off the subject, possibly, but it's all banking and accounting and all that stuff. You know, he's getting real comfortable. And he keeps talking about the OIDs and stuff. What's your thought on it?
OID, when we develop our trusts and everything, it's the conversion, it's the conveyance of property. So what happens is the person gets the property, the United States person, right?
Right.
You're going to claim the 1099 OID. You're going to use the 1099 OID process to acquisition the abandoned property and replace it back to the estate. So everything that comes through, you're taking the Federal Reserve notes that your person got a check for working for the sucker down the street for a week. Every week you get that check and you do a 1099 OID on it and bring it back to your state.
Okay.
Abandoned property.
He sent something, and he's got so much going on trying to run his business too, and you know, but there's a few times he sent the UCC off, and he's like, oh, shit, I forgot to send a damn check, or shit, I forgot to put the number on there and do this, and do that.
Exactly.
Like,
well, you know, guys, every time, here's how it's supposed to work. Every time you go out to the store and you buy groceries, or you go to Walmart and you buy a bunch of stuff, you get this receipt, right? What'd you use? Used Federal Reserve notes that were given to you by the U.S. government to use for private transactions. You just used it for a public transaction, and now you got a receipt, and you do a 1099 to acquisition the abandoned property. What's the abandoned property? The Federal Reserve notes. Well, what do you mean? Because the store charged you. You have a right to discharge. You have no way to pay. You're using Federal Reserve notes to make a payment. You can't do that. They charged you $10. They charged your account $10. It's minus $10. You took in negative $10. The Federal Reserve note promised to pay $10 and added that to the negative $10 you already had, and now you got negative $20 sitting on the account. So you do the 1099 OID on it, and you bring the ledger to a balance by acquisitioning the abandoned property. The IRS will turn around and send you that money back.
it's going to take me a little while to kind of still follow it. I mean, when I listen to him, he sounds just like you in a way. And he's like, man, you just do this.
Yeah,
it's all right there.
I'm glad he's turned his course, and because I know there was a time when we first met a few years back, brother. He didn't want to listen to you. He thought you was a lunatic.
Yeah. But then, yeah, he was like, well, and I thought, because I was like, man, if I could ever get him interested, I took the 1099 OIDs over to him, some forms and stuff that I seen. I was reading, I'm like, holy shit. It was above my head. Let me go in another room. My little girl's like, Dad.
Yeah. See, guys, comprehend the power of that 1099 OID. I filed a 3949A in my last case with the 1099 OIDs and everything. And the DA put a protection order out on me. That was 4 years ago. This DA renews that protection order every year. Says that I accused her of fraud. Scared the living daylights out of them, people.
Well, I mean,
What you doing?
they are committing fraud.
Right, and this is what Sovereign was talking about. How do you get him to just leave you alone? This is what Sparta Boss. How do you get him to just leave you alone? You got to know the information solid enough to know where it belongs.
Oh my Lord. Hey, my brother, he looked up, I forget what he looked up, but I know he sent me a screenshot of something, and it was showing, it said something about Department of Justice and FBI, maybe DEA, and it said Interpol, said his name. If you see his name on these webs, or it said something about a domestic terrorist, and he laughed, and I thought, I was like, at first I was like, shit, I'm like, did you forget? He's like, no, not really. He's like, and I even said that a few years ago, just, looking in there and discovered all this shit. I'm like, you know what? I don't know, damn. Even my cousin, the one that went to prison for conspiracy, trafficking, money laundering, and shit. He's like, you gonna feel all funny when the feds go kicking your door up. I said, for what? Discovering the fraud and the bullshit they're committing. I said, I ain't hurt a soul. I said, I don't see them kicking my door in.
Hey, I'm gonna just in case you guys haven't got on here and read this thing about the Board of Governors exemption of the CIP program, I just copied a piece of it. I want you to pay attention to this. Oops. What did I do here? There we go. See if this works. No, it's only sending it out to one. What the heck? Let me see here. Here we got it. I got it. Okay. Now that shows up on everywhere. Yep. The CIP rule set forth in Section 326 of the USA Patriot Act. Why are we talking about the Patriot Act?
I think to hold them accountable, I believe. I think I heard somebody.
You have the right to privacy as a national, do you not? That's information that's vital to the importance of the nation. That's information of vital importance to the nation. What are they going to do? Start issuing securities with that Social Security number attachment to the United States? That sounds like identity theft to me. Sounds like personage. So think about this stuff, people.
Hey, Keith.
What's going on, Tanis?
Hey, bud, question for you. You're talking about filed paperwork and treason, and they had to renew that every year?
Say what?
You said you were just talking about a gal that you had charged for fraud.
Oh, no, I did in my case. In my case on the travel thing, I filed the 1099 OIDs on the case. And in doing so, I also filed a 3949A noticing the IRS of possible fraud on a commercial transaction in a tax court. And she said that I accused her of committing fraud and filed a protection order against me. This is the same woman that renews that protection order every year.
Okay. What I was wondering, because we went to a case in the next couple of weeks dealing with real estate taxation, and all of that stuff is all based on fraud, goes back to 1933, as you know, where you're only user of your property. When the property was purchased, we claimed it as private property and instructed them to bring the land patent forward, which of course they didn't know how to do and didn't do.
Right.
So basically, they're taxing 3 times the amount they're taxing anybody else. So they're committing fraud there as well. They won't ever bring any evidence forward either.
Yep. Well, real quick here, one of the things I discussed in a previous video on the Numident report, very important to make this connection, guys. The Social Security number is a string of 9 numbers in a style. 3 numbers, dash, 2 numbers, dash, 4 numbers. Okay, these are identifiers of areas and such as that. Now, when we do our status corrections and everything, we turn around and get a EIN, an employee identification number. Now, this too is that same string of numbers, but it's styled differently. It is styled 2 numbers with a dash followed by the 7 numbers. Both of these numbers are known as tax identification numbers. Now, as I pointed out in the Numident report, it's a false record. So if you first are assigned a Social Security number, do certain transactions, and then are assigned an EIN, both of which are the same numbers, styled differently, and considered taxpayer identification numbers, it is still a numerical identification of the taxpayer, whom is the statutory individual to whom the false record pertains. So anybody claiming a tax is making a false claim because they're claiming personal and subject matter jurisdiction, which is inclusive of the record of the statutory individual that is clarified to be false. So they are in fact bringing a false record to the court, conferring subject matter and personal jurisdiction to the court, and that is fraud upon the court. Period. They better never bring me into court. I don't need documentation to prove this. I can write it. I will have that court recorder write it her own damn self. Know this stuff and know thyself. Know they are distinctly different. Their record is false. So speak the word. In the beginning was word, and the word was with God, and the word was God. In the beginning was the word, and the word was with truth, and the word was truth. Quit putting magic in the words.
Words. Yep.
That's all it is. Anybody else? Well, we've gone our hour, and it's been a good one. I think we packed a lot of information in here, and I hope you guys pay attention to that last part there, the CIP rule set forth in Section 326 of the USA Patriot Act. Why is it in the USA Patriot Act?
It's the same set of numbers they run here in Jamaica, because they call ours, like how you have social in yours, they call ours TRN.
Yeah.
Tax registration number. So it's,
Yep.
it's the same thing.
Yep. And it's all a numerical identification system that is false record.
Yeah, but what fascinates me is when I look at, like, you have Grenada, you have Trinidad, these smaller islands, right? And their currency is higher and the population is smaller. And then these larger islands, like that. And the people don't realize that they are the resources, you know. These people not going where nobody is, because
Yep, they're going to strip them up.
Exactly. Yep. And there's no way it can be overpopulated. There's so much land.
Yep. Yep.
You say you shouldn't be homeless, you shouldn't be hungry, you shouldn't be thinking nothing more than just be living and loving, like really and truly.
Yep. There is enough for all.
Mm-hmm.
We are told.
There is more than enough for all, if we really want to be honest.
We are told.
There's more than enough.
We are to give freely that which is freely given, so that we can live in prosperity and abundance.
Yep.
That means that prosperity and abundance has already been freely given.
Yep. You just
Why would we accept anything less?
Yeah.
Yep. I agree. I explain to people one of the biggest things. You know, we hear this saying, the only thing to fear is fear itself. And if you think about your head as this parking ramp, and you're walking in that parking ramp and you see all these automobiles that have license plates on it say fear this and I fear that, I fear this and I fear that. I know a little bit about this and I know a little bit about that. I love this woman and I love these children and I remember these people, but you got all these cars that are still sitting there with all this fear because I fear I'm going to lose these people like I've lost these people. So I cherish these people even more. We got to get rid of the fear. We got to pull those cars out and fill that parking lot back up with license plates that say knowledge. We have to learn. We have to know the knowledge of the words, know the truth of the knowledge, and the wisdom of the truth.
You know, you start off, you know, some people sometimes, like we start off with the traveling thing, you know what I'm saying? Like, well, hell, why you want to? Well, I mean, if they'll lie to you about something like that, what else are they going to lie to you about? When you really start digging in and you see what the hell, you know, and that's why I don't want to stop. I don't want to stop learning.
Traveling is one of the biggest issues because it's the basic concept of ingress and egress. We have the right, we have the freedom of movement, and ingress is when you move into an area. Egress is when you move out of an area. Okay, so as we're moving, we are constantly doing both. We have to learn how to balance that. In order to learn how to balance that, we have to understand that. Most people don't even understand driving and traveling.
I know.
So we're kind of stuck in a hard spot of educating and learning at the same time.
There's several truck drivers that I'm friends with on here that get it, you know what I'm saying? But then there's some that I meet out here and I talk to and I try to tell them, explain to them, well, you understand that what you're doing is commercial nature, right? You're a CDL driver. Yeah. Well, and then I tell them driving's occupation. It's for hire. And when I say, you start thinking about the words and the definition, and they're like, and they just kind of Mr. Smith look.
Yeah.
I mean, you get the call.
Who's got a call coming in?
All right.
Sorry, man.
But
Okay. So what were you saying now?
I forgot. It went past you there, bro.
Well, we were talking about the ingress and egress, freedom of movement, you know?
Right. And I was talking about mentioning how I mentioned sometimes the drivers, you know, that and they're like, I don't know, just go drive. I'm tired of talking to some people. I get real tired of talking to them.
Yeah, well, see, a lot of them comprehend the concept of the commercial aspect, but most of them don't. The thing with the residential driver's license or state driver's license, depending on where you're at, they call it different things, but it's the one that's not commercial. And it will oftentimes even say right on there, for non-commercial vehicle use. And that's still just ambiguous language. And what happens is people don't pay attention to that, and they just take for granted that these people are offering legitimate services when they're not. You know, to perform a motor vehicles operator's lease, you have to give a handwritten statement under penalty of perjury that you're going to use that motor vehicle at least 50% of its use for the conduct of trade or business. Now, if the definition of trade or business is specifically defined as the performance of the functions of public office, it makes only logic and reason that I would need to be in capacity of public office. That requires an oath. I've never made an oath. And now you're telling me that I need to make a statement, a handwritten statement under penalty of perjury that I'm willing to do this, even though I've not made an oath? I'm sorry, the certification is false. Plain and simple. And people, it's just a matter of being able to correlate this stuff. And it's the same thing with their banking. It's a matter of being able to correlate what goes with what. Why are we mentioning the customer identification program rule set forth in Section 326A of the USA Patriot Act? Because they're trying to protect identification and the fact that the record is false. Customer. The proposed rule defines customer to mean any person seeking to open a new account. If you're not a customer, then you don't have to give identification. See, that's just it. We're not going to be a customer of these banks. We're going to have our shit set up in an escrow account, and we're going to contract with them.
Yeah.
We're not going to be a customer. We're going to conduct business affairs together. Equal consideration, equal benefit. Accordingly, the term customer includes a person applying to open an
commercial
account.
contract.
Say what?
I say, yeah, commercial and contract.
Right. Customer includes both individuals and other persons such as corporations, partnerships, and trusts. See? So the account, the record of the trust includes the estate, me as the grantor, the broker as the trustee. That's the account. It's the entire deal. The requirements of Section 326 of the Act apply to any person seeking to open a new account. Accordingly, transfers of accounts from one bank to another that are not initiated by the customer, for example, as a result of merger, acquisition, or purchase of assets or assumption of liabilities. When they do the signing, they have assumed liability. Fall outside the scope of Section 326 and are not covered by the proposed regulation. You got a link on this here? Just put this in the Walter, I posted some links up here earlier in the comments. If you go back and look at them and check those links out there, there's going to be one in there talking about establishing an escrow account. It's important to realize that you have to have other things in place first. You've got to have your authentication or whatnot to establish something of substantive value according to the United States. And that would be the authenticated certificate of live birth under full faith and credit. So you would just deposit that into an escrow account with a third-party bank. And when we look at that section in Title 31 describing the direction of establishing an escrow, it talks about the settlement bank of the Netherlands. I think that's wise to check out. Don't say that's not something I'm indicating that we have to do or should do. That's the way I see it as a possibility that I will be asking questions about to find out if that's the right way to do it. I'm not sure yet.
How about for the people that were naturalized?
It would be
Which
the
I
same
am
thing.
in that category.
It would be the same thing because they're gonna, in that naturalization, what they're doing is they're providing a NUMIDIT, a numerical identification system, and through your naturalization they gave you a social security number, correct?
Actually, the social security number came first.
Okay, right. Yeah. Well, yeah. They established an account, which has a social security number of the person for you to operate during your naturalization, and that was the card they gave you had an account number on it. That's the numerical identification number, and there's proof on and for the record in their own form called the request for Numident report. And I'll go ahead and grab that and post a link here in the comments here for you. And it says right on that form that the record is false. And we can use that against them to prove the record is false. And therefore meet the qualification of exemption. Because they can't force you to use, first off, a false record. Second off, it's a record that belongs to them, and thereby compelling you to commit fraud. They can't do that. And that's about as simple as it gets. So even your naturalization can be construed as fraud because they're conducting or making an accounting of a false record.
Actually, I noticed something very interesting because I request for a copy of my BC from Romania, where I'm coming from.
Okay.
And I had originally one certificate of that. Now, the first one had some numerical number, a group numerical personal number on that BC. Now, the second copy that I received, there were no more numbers there. So basically what I'm saying, what I'm trying to conclusion here is like those numbers are not there anymore in Romania. So something was transferred here.
Right. Because see what we're dealing with here is each nation has a social program. Okay. Here in America, it's called Social Security, and it's what provides the medical for your health and well-being, your welfare. And this is why I say when you sign up for Social Security, say farewell, because you're going to get welfare. I guarantee you, they're going to treat you like nothing because the record's false. You know, they have no liability or anything like that. And I think what happens is these social programs are all accounts that are allowed to use the fiat currency provided by that nation. And I believe Romania is just like America. We contract with the IMF.
Right.
So they're the ones that are actually providing all the funds, period. And every last one of them is a fiat currency with intrinsic value of 0. And we know this because Public Law 7310 and HJR 192 state that the value of the Federal Reserve notes intrinsic value is 0. And the Federal Reserve note is the standard for the world fiat dollar. So if the Federal Reserve note is worth nothing, and whatever the currency they use in Romania is worth 8/9 of what the US dollar is worth, then are they worth less? No, they're still just worth 0.
So it's good to know the 10 rules of commerce.
Yeah, it's
Now, I have another question for you.
sure.
Regarding the estate, you are referring to the estate. Now, what is an estate? An estate needs a deceased, a debt,
Right.
right? So
Right.
who is the debt in that estate that you are referring to?
Okay, and this is why I was talking to Sparta Boss earlier. In a court, in probate, it's to prove will. Okay. In real life,
Yeah.
if you have a written will, you are already proving your will upon your death. So while you're alive, you don't need the estate of a decedent. You have your life estate, in which you were given pure dominion of the land, air, and water. And this is the grant of the trust in Genesis 1:25 through 2:25. You're granted dominion of the land, air, and water as stewards, trustees, stewards, house wards, wards in his house, to go forth in prosperity and abundance so long as you follow his way. And if we step into these courts and start following the way of the probate courts, then we're no longer following his way. We're confused by the words on the paper. And so we have to knock down the words on the paper because they're false. How do we know they're false? Because the defendant has a numerical identification.
Yeah. But this is
What do
why
you
I
think
tell
about
when I
those
went
people
to
that
the,
change their name in the probate court?
Awesome. Awesome. We were just talking about that with the brands. This is what your modern ranchers do today is they make brands. And if they decide they want to change the brand because they've got a new neighbor that's got some herds himself and their brand is close and he doesn't want to infringe, he might want to change his brand slightly and add something to it. Go back out and rebrand all of his property. It's a matter of laying it out in the public, letting them know, let my yea be my yea and my nay be my nay. He is my guide. He protects me. So I shall not waver from his word.
yeah.
Did you guys get that, what he was just highlighting there? He's got it. Federal Reserve notes are not redeemable in gold, silver, or any other commodity and receive no backing by anything. This has been the case since 1933. The notes have no value for themselves, but for what they will buy. So, though they cannot be redeemed by returning them to the Federal Reserve in exchange for gold, because they don't have the gold, you can use them to buy gold.
What about the 82, 81?
Oh, do you have that up on your screen?
No, my brother, I was just telling him real quick. I know we was about to maybe end the Zoom. He was like, we've been here about an hour. And then I was just checking with him. I didn't know if he was still up. And I told him that you had done the OID on your court case in the 3949A. And I was like, you seem pretty familiar with the 1099, process and stuff. And
Right.
and he just said 82, 81 also. And I was like, that's why I asked you real quick.
Yeah, I've got this link here, and it's going to explain the 8281 real quick. And what it is, this is a government form for a return of publicly offered original issue discounts. This is what the receipts are about. This is what the billing statements are about. You have the ability to take those billing statements where they say cut here across it. That's a coupon. It's a coupon. And you have the ability.
He just got one today.
You have the,
he hadn't heard.
yeah,
he hadn't
you have
paid
the
on-
ability, if you take the contradictory terms and conditions to your advantage and overwrite.
Yeah.
Remember,
Yeah.
insurance underwriters, they underwrite the original insurance policy, which is the SSA, Social Security account.
Yeah,
You're
his
going
student
to-
loan.
Right, you're going to overwrite and make it a money order, an international bill of exchange. You're going to draft your order to pay. You're going to hand that sucker to your bank broker. You're not going to send it back to the utility company. You're not going to send it to the IRS. You're going to hand that sucker to your bank broker. Comprehend now? Comprehend now?
He quit paying on the student loan and he said, I hadn't paid on it like 6 or 8 months. He said, and this time they sent me a coupon. He said, check that shit out. I'm like, oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, and see, when we do this stuff and correct our status and all that, it's only because we've gotten rid of that fear of the processes that they're using against us under threats, duress, and coercion. If you don't pay this $28,000 student loan, we're going to come arrest you. Really? They have debtors' privilege. Really? You got to be shitting me. You know, and that's how we gotta act. You know, we gotta get rid of the fear and come forth with the true knowledge. but you do so wisely in truth. I mean, because we were talking, I was talking to another brother, we were talking about white lies. You know, there are some things that you do accordingly to your own advantage for the advancement of your fellow man. And sometimes you just got to look at that court officer and tell him a sweet little white lie. Be choosy about your white lies.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's been a good night. We thank you everybody for coming. I did post my PayPal link in there if anybody wants to help out, chip in a little bit. I don't care if it's $5. I don't care if it's $100. I don't care if it's $1,000. The only way I can help myself is by helping you. So whatever it's worth to you, you guys. I thank you for this forum. This is a great forum because I appreciate you guys being able to chip in and be interactive. It helps bring things to the forefront that I might have surpassed or gone over, or brings things to light that I haven't thought of. So I appreciate you guys just as much as I hope you appreciate me. In the meantime, remember, if it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't be doing this. God bless you. Love you all. Have a great night.
I love, bro.
Peace.
Peace.
Thank you.
Thank you.
He gave us dominion of everything, including every fruit and nut bearing plant, to use wisely and accordingly in prosperity and abundance of our health and well-being. All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, bro.